right, let's get started with 7.5, which is all that we'll do today. It'll take pretty much the whole time. This section is going to be just talking about a lot of different characteristics of a parabola. The first thing that we're always going to be asked to find for the parabola is its vertex, right? And the vertex of a parabola is the point where it changes directions, where it stops going down, starts going up, or if it's upside down, it goes up until it gets to the vertex and then it goes down. So that's what the vertex is, okay? There's also going to be this line that cuts through the vertex and makes both sides of the vertex be symmetrical. It's called the axis of symmetry, okay? Now, remember, when we're talking about a vertical line, which is what that is, so let's just say we have a parabola like this. Its vertex that I just made up, since I went to the right 2 and down 1, would be at 2, -1. Its axis of symmetry, which is the line, the vertical line that goes straight through the vertex, is coming in the equation, right? It's going to be equation since it's a line. What is every single x coordinate if you're on this line? 2. Every single point you've gone to the right 2. So the equation of the axis, oh, sorry, John, I'm going off. Is always going to be x equals whatever the x coordinate of the vertex was. Now, what does the y coordinate tell you? It's going to tell you what is either the minimum value. Anytime you hear the word value, it's talking about the y coordinate. So it's either going to be the minimum value or the maximum value. If your parabola opens upward like this, then that's going to be at the very bottom. It's going to be the minimum value. So the minimum value of this one would just be -1. Not y equals -1, because we're not talking about a line. You're just talking about a value, okay? So the value of this one would be the minimum. It would be the minimum since it's at the bottom is -1, okay? If your parabola opens downward like this, its value would have a maximum, right? Because its vertex would be at the top. So if it opens like this, you're going to have a minimum value because you're going to have a bottom. If it opens up, down like this, your vertex will be at the top or a maximum. Okay, so let's look at some of these. Analyzing graphs of quadratic functions or your x-squared functions. All right, number 1 in 7.5 gives us a graph of a parabola and it actually tells me that the vertex is at -3, 4. It just comes out and tells me that. And the first question is, what's the vertex of the parabola? So I don't even have to do any work here. It tells me that the vertex is -3, 4. And the vertex is a point, so it is an ordered pair. The axis of symmetry is the next question. So remember, the axis of symmetry is going to be a vertical line. So it's going to come in the equation form. And what is the axis of symmetry here? X equals -3. Right? Because every point on that vertical line that cuts this parabola in half is to the left 3. So it's all whatever the x is in the vertex is going to be that axis of symmetry equation. Okay. What is the minimum or maximum value of the function? So let's see. Value is always your y coordinate, and is this one a minimum or a maximum? Minimum, because it's at the bottom of that parabola. So the minimum value is 4. Right, number 2. So this time it doesn't give me the picture. It gives me the function and it says f of x equals x squared minus 12x plus 35. And the first question it asked me is the vertex occurs where? Okay, so the way you find the vertex, if it doesn't just tell you what the vertex is, like it did in number 1, the opposite of V over 2A gives you the x coordinate of the vertex. Okay, this is a quad equation, right? So your A, B, and C are just like they were in the quad formula. A is always in front of x squared, B is in front of x, and C is your constant. So the opposite of V would be positive 12 over 2 times A. So A is 1. So now you're left with 12 over 2, which is 6. So that's the x coordinate of the vertex. How do you think we're going to find the y? What can I do with this 6? Plug it in, right? Because f of x is the same thing as saying y. So y equals, well, if I know what my x's are, I just plug them in. So y equals 6 squared minus 12 times 6 plus 35. And then you can just plug this in right here into your calculator. It'll follow the order of operations and everything if you type it in exactly like you're seeing. So 6 squared minus 12 times 6 plus 35 gives me -1. So there's my vertex. What's the equation of the axis of symmetry? It's just x equals 6. And then it's going to ask the parabola opens up and has a minimum value, or the parabola opens down and has a maximum value. What determines whether it's going up or if it's flipped upside down? That A, right? If the x squared is positive or negative. This one's positive. So it's going to have a minimum value, right? So if I have a minimum, and it's going to ask you to graph it here in just a second. So 6, -1. So to the right 6, down 1. And it opens upward. So it has a minimum value. And what is the minimum value? If this is at 6, -1, the minimum value is -1. And then it's going to ask you to graph this. So you're going to go to graph like you always do, hit the U that's in your toolbox, and then follow the instructions in the yellow rectangle above the graph. The first thing it's going to say is plot the vertex. Okay, so we're going to plot 6, -1 first. Then it's going to ask me to find or plot another point. Once you plot another point, where are you going to get that? You can either plug in numbers for x's, or if you put it in your y equals, can't you just go to table, right? So if you just go to y equals, type in your function. So x squared minus 12x plus 35. And then second table, just pick another point. After 6, 1, it looks like you can plot 4, 3. Okay, so you're just going straight to your table and pulling any points out of there. Okay, number 3. Same thing. Here's my function, 2x squared plus 14x plus 26. First thing it's going to ask me is to find the vertex. Opposite of b over 2a. And where does this come from? Remember the quadratic formula, which was this is where it comes from, right here, the part that is outside of the radical, opposite of b over 2a. This is everything about the quad right here, everything about x squared graphs. Okay, so the opposite of b would be -14 over 2 times a, which will be 2 times 2. So this time I have -14 over 4. If you don't like to reduce in your head, just reduce in your calculator. How can I do that? I can just go to my home blank screen, type in -14 over 4. When you hit enter, you see it's a decimal. Just hit your math and then enter twice. So math, enter, enter will reduce that for you to -7 over 2. Plug it in to find your y. So y equals 2 times -7 over 2 squared plus 14 times -7 over 2 plus 26. Again, I'm not going to want to try to do that in my head, right? I'm just going to type in exactly what that says in my calculator. So 2, open parentheses, -7 over 2, close your parentheses, hit your squared button, plus 14, open parentheses, -7 over 2 again, and then close, plus 26, and hit enter. So since it gives me a decimal, 1.5, just hit math, enter, enter, to get 3/2. So your vertex is -7/2 for the x coordinate and 3/2 for the y. Okay, I can answer most of my questions by just knowing that vertex. The next thing it's going to ask me is, what is the axis of symmetry? Well, it's just always x equals whatever that x coordinate of the vertex was. So -7/2. So this parabola opens up, right? Since the x squared is positive. So its vertex is going to be a what? A minimum, right? Because it'll be at the bottom. And what's that minimum value? 3/2. Now, it is going to want you to graph this, and it's going to want you to plot the vertex first. So let's see. My vertex is -7/2, 3/2. However, when you're graphing and you're going up and down and left and right, it's not going to be going in fraction form. It's going to be going in decimal form. So I do need to know what each one of these are as a decimal, which means just put them in your calculator and hit enter. So -7/2. Right, so it's -3.5. And then 3/2 as a decimal is 1.5. Okay, so it'll tell you, remember where you know where your cursor is, right? Up in the top right, it'll have like a cheap ordered pair. So you want to make sure that you go -3.5. So 3.5. And then 1.5. 3.5. To plot your vertex. And then again, it'll want you to plot another point. So you'll just put the function in your y equals and go to your table to find another point to graph. Okay? Number 4. F of x equals -x² minus 4x minus 10. Okay, so we'll find the vertex again. Opposite of B, +4. Over 2 times A. This times A is -1. So I've got 4 over 2 times -1 is -2. This reduces to -2. So the x coordinate of the vertex is -2. So now I'm going to plug it into the function. So I have negative, open parenthesis, what am I putting in the x? -2 squared minus 4 times -2 minus 10. Again, if you put this in your calculator, it's going to follow the order of operations and everything, so you don't make sign mistakes and stuff. So just negative, open parenthesis, then -2, close, and hit your x squared button. Minus 4, open parentheses, -2, minus 10. That gives me -6. So your vertex is at -2, -6. Where's your axis of symmetry? X equals -2. So this time, how's this parabola going to open? Upside down, right? Because the x squared is negative. So left 2, down 6 is the vertex. Since x squared is negative, though it is going to open downward like this, which means this one's value is a maximum, right? If this is the vertex at -2, -6, -6 is the maximum value of that parabola. So you should have negative open. Yeah, put a negative in front. Yeah, because it's got this negative from this. And then your x that you're plugging in is -2. So again, it's going to ask you when you graph it to plot the vertex first and then any other point. So you just put it in your y equals and go to your table for another point. Number 5. These next couple of problems are true, false problems. Number 5 says the function f of x equals -2x squared plus 8x minus 7. And it says it has a maximum value. So again, all I need to know is that the vertex at the top or the bottom of this. What tells me that? The number in front of x squared. Where is this? How is this going to open up? Going to open up downward, which means its vertex is at the top or it has a maximum value. So that one's true, right? Number 6, determine if this one's true or false. H of x equals x plus 2 squared. So this one says this graph can be obtained by translating the graph of x squared left 2 units. So remember our transformation rules, right? You have inside numbers and sometimes you have outside numbers. The inside numbers shift you horizontally, so left or right, but you go opposite the sign. The numbers out here shift you up and down, and you go with the sign. So this is an inside shift. Where is this +2 going to shift me? To the left 2. So that one was also true. Determine if this one's true or false. So this one says the graph of 5 times x minus 2 squared minus 6 has an axis of symmetry at x equals -6. So let's think, what are these doing? They're shifting where that vertex is. So it's going to be an x squared graph. Where is this going to shift me? It's an inside, so it's left or right. Go opposite the sign. So right 2, down 6. The vertex of the parabola is what's shifting. So right 2, down 6. Right, because what would that make the vertex be? If I went right 2, that means its x coordinate is 2. If I went down 6, it means its y coordinate is -6, which means where is its axis of symmetry? X equals 2. So that's why this one's false. It should be x equals 2 for the line of symmetry. Number 8. We're dealing with this function, f of x equals x squared minus 10x plus 24. Again, it's going to ask the vertex first. So the opposite of b will be positive 10. Over 2 times a, which is 2 times 1. So I've got 10 over 2, which is 5. So there's my x coordinate. And then to find my y, I'll just replace the x's with 5s. So I've got 5 squared minus 10 times 5 plus 24. If I put that in my calculator, it's going to give me -1. So my vertex is at 5, -1. So does the parabola open up and have a minimum, or does it open down and have a maximum? Right, it opens up, which means its vertex is at the bottom. So what is its minimum value? Right, the minimum value is -1. Now it's going to start asking me different questions. It wants to know the range. Let's see, its vertex is at 5, -1. So to the right 5, down 1, it opens upward. So the range, what values does the range talk about? The x values or the y? Y values, okay? So it wants us to talk about what the range is for this parabola in interval notation, okay? So
isn't it bracket infinity, comma -1?
wait, where this is this the maximum or the minimum?
That's the minimum.
So that's where it starts and goes to infinity. So where does my y values start? At the minimum, which is -1. And you do put a bracket around that -1 because a bracket means to include that value. And the -1 is part of the range, right? It's the minimum of the range. And then where do your y values go to? Infinity, and infinity always have parentheses around them. Yeah. Okay, it doesn't make you graph this one, but I like to see the graph, especially when I'm talking about the range and where it's increasing or decreasing. Okay, so look at this, and this is where it changes direction, right? That's what the vertex is. It's where it stops doing one thing and then starts doing the next. So what are the values doing on this side of the vertex? They're going down, which means this side the values are going down until I get here, and then what are the values doing? Going up. So this side is your increase side. When you're talking about increasing and decreasing in interval notation, you're always going to be using your x coordinate, because you're reading the graph from the left side to the right side. So where do I start to increase? Right here, this way. So where did I start my x value, my x coordinate? I don't want to say value. X coordinate is 5. And how am I increasing until infinity? That 5 does have a parenthesis around it, because at this point, you're not increasing or decreasing, right? That's the one point that you're not doing either one. It's where the change happens. So you're increasing, starting at 5 to infinity. Where do you start? Talking about left and right, decreasing.
So is it infinity to
What kind of infinity?
right?
No. Negative infinity, because all the way from the left until I get to 5. So all the way to the left would be negative infinity until I get to 5. It's decreasing. All right, number 9, same exact kind of problem, except it's going to be upside down. F of x equals negative 4x squared minus 20x plus 1. All the same questions. So vertex first, opposite of b over 2a. Opposite of b is positive 20. Over 2 times a, which is negative 4. So I have 20 over negative 8. So if you put that in your calculator to math, enter it, what's it going to give you? 5 over 2, negative 5 over 2. So there's your x coordinate of your vertex. This would be a pain if I didn't have a calculator, but I do. I'm replacing my x's with negative 5 halves. So I have negative 4, open parenthesis, negative 5 over 2 squared minus 20 times negative 5 over 2 plus 1. Again, I'm just punching that in my calculator. So negative 4, open, negative 5 over 2, close, squared, minus 20, open, negative 5 over 2, close again, plus 1, enter. Did y'all get 26? Good. So the vertex is at negative 5 halves, 26. Right. Okay, so I'm just going to draw out so left 2.5, up 26. So we're just going to make up where that would be. And it's opening down. So yes, this one does have a maximum value. And what is the maximum value here? 26. Then increasing and decreasing. Oh wait, actually I think it asked me the range first. Yeah, the range. So this time it has a maximum of 26, which means all the other y values, if this is the maximum, that means it's the highest. All the other y values are below it. This is the top of the range.
So what this means?
Where do you start? Negative infinity to 26. Infinities always have parentheses. What is the 26 going to have around it? A bracket, because 26 is part of the range. Yeah, when you're talking about range, are your y values like the other one that was at the bottom, which means that's the lowest, which is where the range would start and go to infinity. This time, this is where the range ends. So you started at negative infinity and stopped at that maximum point. Now, but when you're talking about increasing and decreasing, this is where it changes directions. What are my values doing on this side? Talking about the y's. If I'm traveling here, what are my values doing? They're increasing. So, and then as soon as they touch this point, what do the values do on this side? This side, they're going down. So where do they start increasing? All the way to the left, right? So they start at negative infinity until they get here to negative 5/2. So negative infinity to negative 5/2, and then that's where they start to go down. So they're starting at negative 5/2, and they go down all the way to the right, which is positive infinity.
Oh, okay, so when it's on the left side, that's when you had a negative.
That's right, because when you're talking about increasing and decreasing, even though you're talking about the values, which is the y values, you read it, the graph from the left to the right.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're starting from left to right. Yeah, so this looks like that's kind of confusing. They're decreasing, but they're decreasing to positive infinity because you're reading it to the right. All right, last one, number 10. So this one's a word problem. And it's talking about a toy rocket. A toy rocket is shot vertically into the air from a launching pad 5 feet above the ground with an initial velocity of 64 feet per second. The height, h, in feet of the rocket above the ground at t seconds after launch is given by the function. So here's what we need. What happens when you shoot off a rocket? What does it do? You start here, you shoot it off. It's going to reach a certain point, and then what's it going to start doing after that? It's going to go down. So, and it gives me the function. Okay, so I don't have to come up with the function by myself. The function is h of t equals negative 16t squared plus 64t plus 5. So remember, what's inside here is always your x. And then this whole thing represents your y, right? It's like saying f of x, where x is inside here, f of x is the same thing as y. It's the same principle. It's just that they're using h and t. So t is the time, and h is the maximum height. Okay, so that's like your x, and that's your y. Okay, so let's find the vertex. That's what we need, right? Because it's going to ask us how many seconds did it take to get there, and what was its maximum height. So finding the vertex. The opposite of b will be negative 64 over 2 times a, 2 times negative 16. So negative 64 over negative 32 gives me 2. Plug it in. find the y. So y, or the height, the maximum height is going to be plugging in 2's for the x's or the t's. We'll say what the t's are. Negative 16 times 2 squared plus 64 times 2 plus 5. So plug that in your calculator. Negative 16, open parentheses, 2, close, squared, plus 64, open parentheses, 2, close, plus 5, which gives you 69. The x, or the t in this case, is the time in seconds. So how long did it take to get here? 2 seconds. And what was the maximum height that it reached? Right. 69 was the maximum height that it reached. So it took it 2 seconds. And it went up 69 feet. Okay.